Plush purple chairs. Sit down and talk with me, if you have time. The tram rumbles past, friendships lift my mood again. I'm feeling the need for community. Plastic tablecloths, spotty design. Sit down and talk with me, if you have time. Notice board yearns for my attention, all kinds of ideas, ways to alleviate the present moment of confusion and bewilderment. Now I'm in the walking group. We order our coffee, then run for the bus. Walk alongside me and talk with me, if you have time. Paths through the trees, one foot in front of the other, supportive conversation in and outside of the centre. Walk alongside me and talk with me, if you have time.
So Middle Street Resource Centre is managed by charity, which is Beeston Community Resource CIO. Took over management of 2/3 of Middle Street as a building in 2015.
We're open to the community and lots of things happen here, both sort of specifically mental health related, but not necessarily directly mental health related as well.
I had my own little house, but I was, stuck in it on my own, having to deal with that, with no real help. It was like trying to run on a broken leg. Then I had a couple of very dramatic incidents, including the death of my older sister. That put me back into a flat spin, 2004. Unfortunately, the system really failed me in terms of, I was on my own, I felt dreadful. I just remember everything being very dark and bleak. I had some very dark thoughts. So I got referred here in about 2008, which I think was the turning point, and begins the story of this place.
So the project started out with a grant from the National Lottery Heritage Fund, which has helped to explore and document the very rich and hidden heritage of a mental health day centre in Beeston, Nottingham. So trying to rectify that sort of gap, if you like, in the history of mental health care, where the key actors in it seem to miss from the archive and the history of it. But also we want to raise awareness of the importance of having access to a place of safety.
So I turned up in this place and immediately I felt there was a great atmosphere and the people were friendly and, the people that I came into contact with were just very welcoming. There's something here, there's something in terms of community that I'm really liking.
I've had my physical disability since birth, it's cerebral palsy, and I've always had I've always felt like a bit different because I went to mainstream school and I've got two sisters and they're both able-bodied. My mum always tried to get me to be as integrated as possible, which was great from one perspective, but then the other perspective is I didn't really have my own tribe as far as disability went. So I was coming up to my 30th birthday about 10 years ago and I just felt like, aside from my husband and my family, I didn't really have anybody that I could call my own sort of thing.
So the exhibition starts here. It just tells you the story behind the project. Here also the history of Middle Street, which is very unique because it's one of those places that embraced social inclusion and user participation ahead of national policy. See this really interesting memory box that was co-produced with people. They used the centre in the cafe area, and it tells the story of the garden, what the garden means to people, both individually and collectively. And when you look at it really closely, you can see there's actually a grey cloud and a white cloud, and there's a shredder that they made to shred negative thoughts, and then the white cloud comes along to support well-being.
So I wanted a place to practice music in. I play and sing Arabic music, and I didn't want to be at home. So I reached out to some people asking if I can have a room, and they pointed out to Middle Street. And at the moment I was suffering with isolation and loneliness. So I called them and they said, actually we are a charity for mental health. So if you have issues, we've got a music room and you can be part of it. And once I've been there, I felt very comfortable. I've gone there a lot of times. There's a music team that I go every Friday, 12:30, and we just jam together. And I sometimes go to the coffee shop and just contemplate, watch people. Sometimes I attend the philosophy class. Everyone there is so chilled, and you would find people sitting down with coloring pens and papers. Some people are talking. People welcome me every time I'm in there.
When I first walked through these doors, I felt the warm atmosphere. Happy faces and people smiling together. The blinds dance in the breeze. The smell of fresh cooking floats in from the kitchen. I'd been ill for some time. When I returned, my friends in the music group clapped as they could see that I was better. I remember the roast dinners and puddings. I used to work here on a Saturday and serve up the breakfast. The smell of honeysuckle wafts in from the garden through the window, and it takes me back to a place long ago that I often dream of.
Around the 2010s, the centre was threatened with closure by the council, mostly because of this new policy of inclusion, which also coincided with the austerity programme, which was literally closing down services. I'm sure many people remember lots of services closing in health and social care, and obviously these centres were really heavily hit. Policies brought in by the coalition government that negatively affected access to mental health services. So since the closure of institutions, support type services and structures for people with long-term serious mental ill health have never fully been developed. So there's a very limited investment in this kind of access to services like mental health day centres.
The government's model was to replace it with personalised budgets where people can create their own support packages and completely under their own control, and no recognition whatsoever of the importance of community and social networks. It's heartbreaking for us. It was self-directed support. We used to call it state-directed solitude. That was one term for the other one was systematic destruction of services. That was how we understood it.
So hard to build, but quick to fall. Sometimes there's enough, others none at all. Stand at the counter, working the till. This is where confidence begins to instill. Some want to drink, some want to feed, but for me, being useful is all that I need. Trusted with money, casting a smile. It's hard for my depression to say this is not worthwhile. If I was good for nothing, then I couldn't do this. Define depression. Absolute bliss. Depression's still there, but in the back of my head. I'll be damned to feel better off dead. If you feel it's too hard, that you're not good enough, take my advice, try to call depression's bluff. Stand at the till, and just breathe and feel free. Build up your confidence, and get my coffee.
It's a time in the week and a space in the week for women with any type of mental health issue. So it can be as small as anxiety and depression, or as big as borderline personality disorder, schizophrenia, or anything like that, to just come together in a safe space and just be around others that go through similar things, and we can just sit and have a chat. It's that sense of community and feeling like I belong, and it's a bit of time off real life as well. And obviously we deal with some heavy stuff sometimes, because sometimes people are going through really hard stuff, but that helped me to realise that I'm not the only one to feel like I'm feeling.
I'd always view it as supporting or facilitating it. I try to stay away from describing things as leading. I'm here to support the people who come.
It was always ahead of its time in terms of progressive policies and reforms in mental health. So the centre was built in 1972, and already in 1989 they started to introduce something called user participation, where people that use the centre were invited in the decision-making process, and people with lived experience of mental ill health would volunteer and basically even lead groups.
For my own personal story, I felt that it was about time I was getting more confident in myself, and I felt I really wanted to put something back, which is when I was able to do some voluntary work. I think I learned to engage and trust with people, which is no small thing. The person I am now, who sounds completely different from the person of 2008,
It would be now much more about a partnership approach to a service, so it feels that there's a degree of ownership for people who engage with it. In other words, we're not here to say what we feel people should be involved in. It's really very much about discussions and engagement based on what people would feel useful.
I think generally there's always been a feeling that everybody is there for everybody else and wants the best, and will try and help with that happening. I suppose that came from the staff downwards, I suppose.
There is structure in my day. Someone might even miss me if I stay away. I can hear the guitarist strumming. I find it lifts my mood, and I see a volunteer smiling as he serves up the food. Cheese omelette on my plate, friends who care. They help me feel connected and thankful to be there. The garden feels so peaceful, and not only flowers bloom, but friendships, hope and encouragement is found in every room.
The centre was threatened with closure in 2010 because the local council wanted to reduce spending. But what was very interesting about Middle Street is that the people that used the centre actually stood up against the closure and started to campaign, which is something that the council wasn't expecting.
2014, the county council came in and measured it up to turn it into offices. And that's when we set up a charity, Beeston Community Resource.
Mental health service users experience high levels of stigma and have low levels of power. Never more so than when they're isolated, but when they're together and enabled as a community, they actually start to have some power. And that power is only there because of the community.
I just see it as like a hub just for anybody. You don't have to have a mental health issue to come. You used to be referred, but now you can just come and just have a coffee, or you can come and do any of the activities. A lot of things that people have said that have just been introduced to the centre is that it's an amazing community hub and that a lot more places need this.
My whole thing, since I became involved, before I got involved, there's really two things that I kind of focus on and just kind of live this day to day. Enrich the lives of others and enjoy myself. And it gives me this job and this place gives me an opportunity to do that. If it disappeared tomorrow, I would still be doing that. That's my thing. But it is a beautiful opportunity to be able to do that, which is why I'm still here and still doing it. And so on a personal level, that's what it means to me. It gives me an opportunity to do that. And hopefully, anyone who's kind of aligned with that sort of philosophy, it gives them an opportunity to do that. And I think that's kind of why it works the way it works.
I am very fortunate in everything's fallen into place for me, timing-wise, because it's very difficult when support's withdrawn, when you're particularly needing it. Other centres went, that was it, completely lost. The fact that we're still here is just amazing.
Haven within a hectic society. Stand strong, share smiles, support each other. Listen, learn, lean on me. An optimistic song, a song to soothe, garden air. A butterfly flutters. You can't catch it in your hand. Would you want to? Friendships bloom. Sit together, share a story, drink some coffee, resist the cake.